On this day, 1991, Kenneth Branagh's fantastic suspense thriller Dead Again opens in theaters. And we're back like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I want to thank you all for spending some of your Friday morning here with me in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Today marks the 33rd anniversary of a film that I would certainly have on my list of best suspense mystery thrillers to come out of Hollywood during the decade of the 1990s. And that film is Kenneth Branagh's pretty clearly Hitchcockian homage, Dead Again. A great title, and a title that, spoiler alert, really seems to sum up this narrative very well. You might even say too well for huge stretches of its running time. Now, in general, if people ask me, and these are the kinds of questions that one such as myself, and if you're a film geek out there like me, you probably get asked these sorts of questions too. Not all the time, but you're in conversation. But if somebody asks a question, give me some 90s films in the realm of suspense, mystery, thriller. What are some that you think I'd enjoy that maybe I haven't seen? This film is one of the first ones that I will name. And for reference, I will also say Breakdown with Kurt Russell, totally different kind of a mystery suspense thriller. I will throw out In the Line of Fire, Clint Eastwood. I'll throw out The Fugitive, Harrison Ford, although most people probably would have seen that, and many will have seen Clint's film. But Dead Again occupies a unique space in that Kenneth Branagh, it was his first film in America. He kind of almost pulled a Hitchcock where he was working overseas in England. He did Henry V, which got all kinds of acclaim. And he continued to do work overseas while establishing a foothold and a pretty significant career in the United States. Kenneth Branagh, similar to Brian De Palma, for example, and from a certain perspective, Jordan Peele with Get Out. These are all filmmakers, well, in the case specifically of Branagh and De Palma, that Hitchcock was their guy. It is very obvious that Branagh studied Hitchcock and worshipped Hitchcock because Dead Again, it's just written all over it. Every frame, it's calling attention to itself. Okay, this reminds us of Psycho. This reminds us of Vertigo. There's a little bit of Spellbound here. None of this is an accident. It's not a coincidence that Branagh chose to shoot the film in the way that he did, in the kind of noirish, where even when it is daylight outside, it's not really daylight. It looks a little muddy. So Branagh had this idea, and he made the movie with his, at the time, wife, the fantastic, luminous Emma Thompson. Now, Emma ended up winning a Best Actress Oscar the next year for a Merchant Ivory film, which, I gotta be honest, I think it's overrated. And I'm a Merchant and Ivory fan. Remains of the Day is one of the greatest movies ever made. Howard's End is just okay. I feel about Howard's End the way I feel about A Room with a View. It's just okay. It's not the masterpiece, in my opinion, so many people saw. I felt the same way about Ang Lee's Sense and Sensibility. I was just like, what's everybody hitting the ceiling for? This movie's just, not that exciting. But it's difficult. Period pieces, even beautifully acted period pieces, sometimes difficult to latch onto. But Emma Thompson was going places, as they say. She was a mover and a shaker. And what this movie does, it sets us up to feel as if we're a fly on the wall to a relationship that is already 40 plus years in the past. So the genius of Dead Again, and I'm going to tread very lightly because I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to give you any information that won't be readily available just from looking at one of the posters. Emma Thompson and Kenneth Branagh play two characters each. In present day, Kenneth is a private eye named Mike Church, and Emma Thompson plays an amnesiac. We don't really know who she is, where she comes from, and it's up to Kenneth Branagh's Mike Church figure out, who is she? Who does she belong to? What is she doing here? Why did she lose her memory? What the fuck is happening? In the past, the 40s, they play a kind of tragic couple, Roman and Margaret Strauss. And Roman Strauss apparently murdered Margaret Strauss with a pair of scissors. And it's kind of funny how in the 1940s segments, Branagh's hair is completely different and he has like a Van Dyke. I just always get such a kick out of when they screw around with facial hair, like Stallone. I was joking around with the fact that he had a goatee in Get Carter. Of all of the people in Hollywood who I would never have imagined would have a goatee in a movie, I feel like Sylvester Stallone might be the guy. And there he is in Get Carter, wearing a goatee. Hey, these guys really get this guy's goatee. Funny. But it is difficult from the filmmaking perspective and as an audience when you're watching it because you can get restless. But Branagh is so skilled with how he shifts back and forth through time. Present day, past. And you never lose sight of either narrative. And the basic setup is, it appears that the relationship between present day Mike Church and as he meets Emma's character, whose name, I don't remember her name in present day. It's not really important what her name is. What is important is what the fuck is happening here. And as the plot threads in both present and past start to converge, it looks like history is going to repeat itself. If Roman Strauss bumped off Margaret Strauss, well, then maybe Mike Church is destined to bump off this woman that he is significantly falling for. Maybe there were greater forces at work. But see, if that was just what this movie is about, it's not really that special. The film teases a lot of threads that don't pay off in the way that we expect them to. It's to the film's credit that it is able to maintain suspense all the way through. And there are two very important supporting performances, a pair of fucking legendary home run hitters. The first one is Derek Jacobi, an absolutely brilliant British actor who Branagh was friends with and worked with and brought on board for this movie. And he seems to be like a random shop owner, but you know there's going to be more. He's not just going to be a random shop owner. The late, great Pulitzer Prize winning movie critic, Roger Ebert, he used to do this, it was a glossary of movie phrases, movie names, and definitions that weren't real definitions, but they were just definitions that Roger came up with after decades of being a film critic and understanding the inner workings of the movie business and how Hollywood does this. And Roger Ebert had a dictionary entry that he called the law of the economy of characters. And the law of the economy of characters means that in a Hollywood production, there is not going to be any character that is not there for a legitimate purpose, unless the filmmakers are just completely bonkers and off their rocker. And clearly that's not the case here. You know that there's got to be more to Derek Jacobi's character than he's a shop owner and he can hypnotize people. There's got to be more than that. There is. And Derek Jacobi, his line readings, he's Shakespearean. He was trained in the theater. There are just certain people that when they deliver a line, you say, this guy was born to do this. Derek Jacobi, his line readings are up there with Richard Burton. I would say that despite his career not exactly being as great as it should have been, even though he was nominated for 5 or 6 Academy Awards, Richard Burton's line readings are as good as anyone who ever lived, even Olivier, because Burton had a better voice than Olivier. Broadsword calling Danny boy, come in Danny boy. Broadsword. Nobody could do it like Burton, but Derek Jacobi is close, and he has line readings in this film that are just absolute gold. He had a very expressive face for the movies as well. He could go from menace to charming and back again. Just an absolute home run hitter. Now, many of you know, especially in the social media era, and we get excited when, for example, M. Night Shyamalan, the super talented writer and filmmaker, he makes appearances in his films, sometimes significant supporting roles like in Signs, which is my favorite film of his, and other times it's just a brief kind of walk-on. And it is also a bit of a tribute to Alfred Hitchcock, who used to make a cameo. In Hitchcock's case, he didn't want to get involved in the story. Hitch knew his limitations. He usually was in the movie for 3 seconds, 5 seconds maximum, and sometimes you have to really look to even see his cameo. In Rear Window, if you don't know that it's his cameo, it might get right past you. He's barely in a number of the movies in which he cameos, and typically, if it's a serious story, he'd like to get it out of the way as early as possible, because he certainly didn't want to draw attention to himself. But celebrity cameos, it was different in the pre-internet era. And there were times where the studios would do their best to put movie critics and people writing about the movie at large on lockdown, because it was so important to them. Don't tell anybody what we did here. Don't tell them about such and such a cameo. I'll give you an example. The movie Seven. The internet was in its infancy. This is 4 years after Dead Again. There's a suspense film, but that's much more brutal and graphic than, for example, Dead Again. Although Dead Again has some moments of pretty serious bloodletting, if you will, mayhem and murder. But in Seven, spoiler alert, Kevin Spacey is in the movie. It's not a cameo, but he doesn't show up for huge chunks of the film. The studio begged and pleaded with Premiere Magazine, Variety, Daily Variety, Entertainment Weekly, and the newspapers watching, when the newspaper critics would watch the film. Don't say anything about Kevin Spacey being in the film. So the early reviews hinted at a big star, because Spacey's career was very much on the rise, a big star in a smallish role. We're not supposed to tell you who it is. And I don't remember if anybody broke that embargo. I'm not sure. But in Dead Again, a big-time actor, a guy who had been nominated for Oscar and was going to win an Oscar years later, was supposed to make a cameo in this film. But if you watch the movie, if you don't know who it is, it's Robin Williams. If you just are watching a film, you're a 20-year-old kid whose father recommends this movie and you're hooked on the story, and you don't recognize Robin Williams, you're 20, he's been gone a decade, you've never seen any of his films, you know the name, you don't know what he looks like. You would not say, oh, there's a big cameo I'm supposed to know from. No, it's a supporting role. If it was supposed to be a cameo, Robin was so good, they gave him extra scenes, they gave him more to do. And Robin Williams helps to sell this film. And I remember reading and being able to put together who they were talking about. Newsday kind of broke the embargo. They said something about, an Academy Award nominated actor who's mostly known as a comedian. And then somebody who saw the movie said, yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. Why Robin Williams isn't in the credits? He's not in the credits. Branagh didn't want to oversell the role, but he wanted people to be surprised. He wanted people in the middle of the movie to say, holy shit, I didn't know Robin was in this. This is amazing. So Robin Williams plays a retired psychiatrist who might know more than he is letting on. Or maybe he's just batshit crazy and sees an opportunity to kind of screw with time. This is what happened in the past, and this is what's going to happen in the future. They kill you then, you fuck them up now. I don't know if that's really good advice, but maybe Kenneth Branagh is not going to have much of a choice. There is a big question in this film, and we've seen movies that do this. The idea of fate versus free will. Are people in control of their own destiny, or are they not? The Matrix, right? You're not here to make a choice, Neo. You're here because you already made that choice. I don't wake up and choose to work out. Somehow I already know that I'm gonna do it. You're not here to make a choice. You're here because you've already made the choice. So there is a lot of, it's not that they're debating fate versus free will, but it's a process. It is a conceptual thing here. Are the characters of Roman and Margaret perpetually screwed, or are they not? And what really happened in the 40s? Did he really kill her? The shifting perspectives. This is another thing the movie does well. There's a little bit of a, and I apologize for a very old school reference, there's a little bit of a Rashomon, and that's the famous Akira Kurosawa film where it deals with a circumstance, and we don't exactly know what happened. We only know what happened because different people tell us the same story, but depending on who's telling the story, it's not the same story. And Ridley Scott did that in a movie that I think is massively underrated, The Last Duel. I thought it was phenomenal. You get Adam Driver's story, and you get Matt Damon's story, and you get Judy Comer's story, and never the twain shall meet. So in this film, we are given seemingly good information by the character played by Andy Garcia, who's fucking great. And his role was underreported on too at the time. It seems that Roman Strauss was abusive and an asshole and didn't treat his wife with the proper level of respect, care, kindness, and love. But then we get another perspective that says, well, that's actually not true. He was a good husband. They spent too much money. They were living too lavish of a lifestyle for what he was doing. Sound familiar? We've all had those moments. Maybe we were living too high on the hog. Maybe we shouldn't have bought this home when we would have been better suited financially if we bought that one. Maybe we didn't need to drive an $80,000 car when a $40,000 car would have done just as well, whatever it might be. But as the perspective shifts, our process as the audience changes. We go from sympathetic to this character, unsympathetic to that, and then suddenly it flips. And this movie has a lot of flips, a lot of twists and reversals, a lot of moments where we're pretty sure we know what's happening. We don't. And the best of suspense thrillers, not in a cheating way, but is consistently pulling the rug out from under us, maybe putting us into a false sense of security. Not that everything's going to be fine, but a false sense of security that we know what's coming. We know what's about to happen. We're ahead of the story. No, we're not. And I mentioned the movie Breakdown with Kurt Russell. That's from a different angle. There's a lot of mystery, and there's what the fuck is going on here kind of stuff. Is this guy in on it? Is that guy in on it? But this is more of a story of who's going to kill who and why, or who's going to try to kill who and why. And does it really have anything to do with the past? See, casting the two principals in the dual roles, it gives us ideas that may or may not come to pass. And that was deliberate. That was a stylistic choice. They didn't have to do it that way, but maybe they did. But Branagh could have gone in another direction. I'll give you an example of what I mean. So in John Grisham's book, The Firm, also a suspense thriller with mystery elements, but nothing like this. The movie version it's okay. It's very long. But in the book, the main character, Mitch McDear, Tom Cruise in the movie, he has an older brother who, as written in the book, looks almost exactly like him, just a decade older. Okay. Now, when you're making a movie, how do you do that? Because Sidney Pollack, as filmmaker, if you're just going off of the way that John Grisham describes Mitch McDear's brother, he looks exactly like him, only older. There is great pains taken in the book to inform us of the fact that he could almost pass for him. They could have used Tom Cruise and done a little bit of age makeup, maybe a little bit of prosthetics, grayed up the sideburns, whatever. Could have done that. They didn't do that. They cast David Strathairn as the brother. Something similar could have been done here. They could have gotten the same idea across. But Branagh says, no, fuck it. We're going to play Emma and me, both characters. I think it works beautifully. It could have backfired. And I guarantee you, as great a filmmaker as Sidney Pollack was, I am quite confident that he considered doing what I said and what Branagh did here. But ultimately, they cast it, and I think casting both of them was perfect. It's very well calibrated. The jump scares, there's a lot of jump scares. If you don't like jump scares, this movie isn't for you. But if you like that kind of delicious edge of your seat tension, there is a lot of stuff that happens here that feels like it's part of a plan. Now, I remember when I started my senior year in high school, Dead Again was still in theaters. So the film had a budget of somewhere between $12 and $15 million, and it grossed about 2.5 times its production cost. So it was I guess you could call it a sleeper hit. But this was a film, people who saw it at the time were raving about it. So it's almost unusual that it didn't do even better business, because everyone I knew who saw it said, Jerry, you got to see this movie. This is fucking great. And I remember a teacher I had for contemporary media, my senior year of high school, good old Massapequa High, she saw it and absolutely loved it. And she was telling me she got to see this movie. I didn't see it in theaters. I also didn't see another Robin Williams film, which he shot his scenes here concurrently with. The Fisher King was in theaters, not at the same time, but within that ballpark. Robin's hair is the same in this movie as it is in Fisher King. And since I know that they had to be shot concurrently, these things aren't an accident. His character looks disheveled in The Fisher King. He's disheveled here. Yeah, for sure. But I saw the movie when it premiered on HBO, and right away, this is close to a 4-star movie. Hitchcockian. I think that decades ago, the phrase Hitchcockian was thrown around a little bit too much, but it does apply here. This was very much Hitchcockian. As Brian De Palma, Obsession, and Dress to Kill, and Carrie, and Blowout, oh my God. Body Double? De Palma was aping Hitchcock all over the place, right? This is Branagh's one tribute, one homage to the master of suspense. Because Hitchcock liked to kind of pull the rug out, but not all the time. Because I can point to 2 movies in particular, 2 of his best, North by Northwest. The audience is way ahead of Cary Grant's Roger Thornhill, way ahead. And in Vertigo, we know information that James Stewart, Scotty Ferguson does not know. It puts us in an awkward position in both movies. Hitchcock just didn't give a shit. He was going to tell his story the way that he wanted. In Dead Again, we are just as bewildered as the characters. And for the world of this film, I think it works brilliantly. And I've probably seen Dead Again, 6 or 7 times from start to finish, and it always grabs me. The performances are they're just so realistic. And Branagh's American accent, he's pretty fucking good. And Kenneth Branagh's a guy that I've always been a fan of. He did a film, ironically, the year that Emma Thompson won Oscar for Howard's End, which was films released in 92. He did a movie with her with a tremendous, mostly British cast, including Hugh Lowry and Imelda Stanton, among others, called Peter's Friends. And it was like a British Big Chill, only a lot chillier, was how Roger Ebert described it. And that was a movie that I believe was supposed to be Oscar bait for a lot of the kind of supporting performers. The movie's very good, but it didn't reach that level, critically. And Branagh was in. He did Much Ado About Nothing with Denzel and Keanu Reeves, and again Emma Thompson. He did the Frankenstein, the version of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where De Niro plays Frankenstein's monster, and Helena Bonham Carter, who I guess he hooked up with her, and that's kind of what ended his marriage to Emma Thompson. But Branagh was a guy that was always on the radar. And this is a true story. You can Google this. When George Lucas was starting to at least get ideas together for what became the prequel trilogy, the first reports we heard at New York University circa 1995, the first rumblings of what was going to be, we were told that Lucas was working on new versions of the original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6. And the first casting thoughts that we got, Leonardo DiCaprio as Anakin Skywalker, young Anakin that would be, and Kenneth Branagh as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And when I first heard that, I thought it was a great idea. So I'm not sure exactly why that iteration did not pan out, but it did not, because not long after that, we started hearing about they're going to go with a younger Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor, and DiCaprio, it's not going to be him. Whoever it is, it's not going to be him. Well, as it turned out, because they were going even younger with Anakin, that's how Jake Lloyd ended up getting the part for The Phantom Menace. But the idea is Kenneth Branagh was high up enough in the industry by the mid-90s already that Lucas had targeted him and earmarked him. He says, I think I can use him. I love this guy. Branagh is a very talented and resourceful actor. Even, movies like Dunkirk. I couldn't stand Wild Wild West. He was the villain in that, and that was, what a disaster. Catastrophe. You take talent like that, like Branagh and Kevin Kline and Will Smith, and you make just a fucking disaster out of it. Bad. I think that Dead Again is the best movie that Branagh ever made. Although many people would say his version of Hamlet that he did in 96, Robin Williams was in that too, that many people say is the definitive cinematic interpretation of Hamlet. And there was a joke going around that Branagh I think he was nominated for adapted screenplay, or somebody got nominated for adapted screenplay. The joke was they should have given the award to Shakespeare, because 90-something% of what ended up in the movie was actual text from Shakespeare. It's kind of funny. Yeah, let's nominate so-and-so. Yeah, give the award to Shakespeare. Get the fuck out of here. That was hilarious. I remember Siskel and Ebert giggling about that on the air because they both loved it. They said, how did it end up getting nominated? This was the following year. Says, yeah, they just took the text to give a posthumous Oscar to William Shakespeare. Great idea. But Dead Again, a fantastic mystery suspense thriller. Certainly top 10 in that range from the decade of the 90s, which I have argued, and I will go down on this hill, is the best movie decade, especially for Hollywood. They got so many things right in almost every year from 1990 through 99. Even 95, which was the weakest year, in my opinion, of the decade. But almost every year has a number of all-time home run hitter type movies. Dead Again, released on this day, 1991, directed by Kenneth Branagh, starring Kenneth Branagh, Emma Thompson, Derek Jacobi, Andy Garcia, Hannah Scheigele, there's a name from film school, and a very small role, Campbell Scott, George C. Scott's grandson. This has been episode 284 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I want to thank you all for spending some of your Friday morning with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.